We're so excited today to be with this beautiful family, the Simoneaux. And we have a long time history with this family, loving them, being friends. And today we were able to be in their incredible church, Victory Worship Center here in Houston, Texas. But I wanted to take this opportunity because of some of the amazing history and the story, the narrative of their life. And I just thought we'd take a few minutes, just talk to them, because I feel like it would build people's faith if you could hear this story. So that's what we're doing today in this Mexican restaurant here. And so I'm going to start with Vicki Simoneaux, the mama. And I just want her to just kind of do this is Elder Simoneaux, Tremayne. And this is Timothy, their son. But I wanted to start with you, Vicki, and just kind of give a synopsis of the story.
Yeah. So we were missionaries. We were living in Malawi, Africa, Southern Africa. We had been down to South Africa for a big missions conference. And while we were there, Timothy got sick. He was 13 at the time. He got sick with an earache. We traveled up through Zimbabwe, stopped to do what we do. We stopped to minister over the weekend. He had a bad earache, so we were staying at some friend's home. And we just left him at the house that Sunday morning, and we went on to church. And we were going to a second church out in the village Sunday afternoon. And while we were there, Tremayne received a phone call from actually the house help of the house where we had left Timothy and said, "I think he's very sick. You might want to come back." So we didn't go to the other service. We went there. His ear was hurting him very bad. He was crying, just in a lot of pain with an earache. We took him to a local little clinic, emergency room. And they looked and confirmed he had a bad ear infection, but while they were checking the ear, they actually ruptured the eardrum. That's pretty common with the ear infection, so that wasn't too drastic, except for what happened is when they ruptured his eardrum, the infection went into somehow a breach in the skull, so it got into the cerebral lining. And on Monday morning, we got up, we went to drive back to Malawi, which was 12 hours or so back to where we lived in Blantyre. Timothy was very sick the entire ride home that Monday. We got home Monday evening, got home to just a household of disasters. Freezers had gone out, we had nasty food. So we got home, we had a sick child, but we were just trying to take care of things that you just do on the mission field and you just make it work. And we knew he was on some medication. They had given him antibiotics, and hopefully he was going to get better. And we decided not to put him. His bedroom was at the opposite end of the house from ours. There was like a family room close to our bedroom. We put him on a red futon. We'll never forget that red futon. We put him on a futon to sleep during the night so that he was close to our bedroom. About 4 a.m, I woke up to just some weird sounds. So I ran to check on Timothy, my 13-year-old son. I found him having convulsions. And so I woke his dad up. Where we were, it was easier for us, and he was unresponsive. It was easier for us to get him to a hospital than to call an ambulance. So his dad picked him up, carried him to the car. He sat in my lap on the way, or I held him on the way to the hospital. We got to the hospital, we got him into the emergency room. They immediately believed that he had meningitis. And so they started doing spinal taps. That was a horrific thing. I couldn't watch. Dad stood in the room with him. I couldn't handle it. It was confirmed within just a little bit that he had pneumococcal cerebral bacterial meningitis. That's a mouthful. It is the second deadliest meningitis that they have. And so there, when they confirmed that, we were in Blantyre, Malawi at a hospital. And so to them, it wasn't worth wasting your medicine on. They didn't put him on any oxygen. They did nothing, didn't take his contacts out. We was whisked away to an ICU room, and that's where we were going to be. Thank God we are a part of a great organization, the United Pentecostal Church International. People around the world began to pray, and because we were missionaries of the UPCI, we had wonderful, fantastic insurance. And Headquarters Global Missions, Carl Morgan began to deal with our insurance company, and they immediately said, we're not going to leave this child there. We're going to get him out of Malawi. We're going to get him to Johannesburg, South Africa, where there's better medical care. Being where we were, the airport wanted bribes and all of this stuff for an air ambulance to fly in. So they wouldn't do it that day because they didn't get it all approved in time. There was no runway lights and all of that, and it was kind of in the mountains, so they couldn't land at night. So they had to wait till the next morning. They said at first light they would take off and come. So the next morning, which was a Wednesday morning, a team came from Johannesburg. It was 2 doctors and the pilot. When they got to the airport, they looked at us and they said, he is much worse than what the medical team here had told us he was. And so they came out and talked to us that we just don't think it's not really safe to even put him on a plane. So my husband looked at him, and it was a medical, she was a female doctor, a children's doctor out of Johannesburg. And she just looked and she said, do what you would do if this was your child. You wouldn't want your child dying here in this country. So she said, okay, give us a minute. We're gonna, they put him on life support. We're gonna do all of that because remember he was on nothing and not conscious at all. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to get him out of this country for you. So we had a wonderful friend of ours who was there with us. I guess it's okay to mention that. He was wonderful. He was Hindu. He was President Vikesh Vanzara. He was the president of the Hindu Society of Malawi. He had gone and bought Tremayne a first-class ticket because he couldn't fly on the air ambulance with him. He went and personally bought Tremayne a first-class ticket to get him on the flight out that day to Johannesburg. And the doctors came in, and they knew Tremayne had to leave to get to the airport to get on that flight. And Tremayne went in and said his goodbyes to Timothy. He came out, he crumbled against the wall. And this little short man, Indian guy, Vikesh, he got behind Tremayne, put his arms around him and stood him up. Looked at him, I'll never forget it. Vikesh said, you have been faithful to your God. Your God is going to be faithful to you. He said, let's get to the airport. And he took Tremayne to the airport. I rode in the ambulance, and then the air ambulance, and that's another long story. How they didn't want, anyway, that's another long story. But they actually ended up police allowing Tremayne to come over, look in the air ambulance, go out on the tarmac, get in the air ambulance to see Timothy settled on the plane. And I rode with Timothy in the flight. Several times during the flight, they did what they called bagging him because it was a handheld thing. And several times during the flight to Johannesburg, we were losing him. And the team just worked with him. And I sit there with his head right at my knees. And he was stretched out in the Learjet we were in. And I was just very quiet and praying, God, you got this. We got to Johannesburg. We went to a wonderful hospital. He was on life support for 7 days, I believe. I think
intubated for 3.
He was intubated for 3.
In coma for 3.
In coma for 3, yeah, that's right. And anyway, when the day they were going to bring him out from under, the doctor says, we're just going to try it. We don't know if this is going to work. We had been given that because of the care he had been given in Malawi, that probably there would be some brain damage, and didn't know if it would really be what would happen when they brought him up. But they had told us this particular time. We had reached out to everyone in the States. This is the time, your time. They're going to start bringing him out from under this anesthesia. And the first time they brought him out was they only had to do it one time. They could only do it 3 times, they said. And the first time, he immediately began to open his eyes and look around. And of course, he was having trouble seeing. He wears contacts. They had actually gotten his contacts out. But he was trying to focus. And we knew right then that God was going to do things. It was a pretty long recovery. He lost a lot of memory. At that time, he lost most of his schooling. We had learned, he was 13. We had to go through some learning therapy with him, but we just kept praying and believing God. His dad, one morning we woke up, and early in the morning, we were staying at a beautiful little lodge right across from the hotel, and they had told us while he was in a coma for us to stay together at night, that Mom and Dad, it was important. We stay together and we sleep. And then said, because when he come out from the coma, we would start alternating. But one morning, I think it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, his dad woke up laughing, and he had a dream. And why don't you share that part, because that's an amazing dream. And then we'll let Timothy share his part.
I woke up on the morning that they were supposed to wake him up from the medically induced coma that he had been in for 72 hours. And I woke up just wide awake with, it's a Bob Marley song actually, but it was just going over and over in my mind and my heart. Everything's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. And we felt like everything's going to be all right.
And it was. The only thing really was left once we got back to the States with him after he was a while. We were there for a while before they was able to get him on a plane and bring him back. He had to go through some medical clearance. He had to have his balance a little better. The only residual that he has from that is the left ear, which was the ear that he had the infection started in, which they proved that there was a little crack in the skull, possibly could have been from a four-wheeler accident he had earlier in the year. Could have been from any childhood trauma or anything, and that's very common for any of us, and that's where the infection leaked through to get there. But God has been faithful and God has been good, and his favorite song right before all that was a Ty Tribbett song. I want it all back. Everything that the devil stole from me, I want it all back. That was his teenage song, or preteen song that he loved. And we actually sang that over and over and over to him. And at times when he was anxious, and he went through some anxious times after it come through, he didn't like to be in crowds, and he was dealing with the one single-sided deafness, which makes things, and it made his gait, his balance off. And so we just would remind him of that song. You're going to get it all back.
Well, you would never know it by what I saw this morning, Pastor, as you were leading your church in worship on the keyboards and leading worship. I would never even know that you ever had a moment's problem with ears or balance or whatever. But just talk to us, Pastor, a little bit. Just tell us what you remember about that, and now what has happened in your life.
So I don't remember any. I was unconscious for most of it, and the memories, basically every memory before that is it doesn't feel real. I know the stories that were told, but I don't actually have the memory of those things. Mm-hmm. So we used to go on vacation every year to Victoria Falls. I don't actually have any memories of that. I just know the stories. We lived in a really big, beautiful house in Zimbabwe. I don't actually remember that. I just know the stories. And that has caused a lot of, before we started the interview, my dad said he doesn't like to talk about it because it causes PTSD. That has caused a lot of PTSD for me, to use a exaggerated term, as I don't actually have the memory of being in Africa. I don't actually have those Christmases and vacations and houses that we lived in. I don't actually remember any of that. I just know the stories. That has been the hardest part of the recovery for me. Being deaf on the left side was weird to get used to, but I didn't like make up in my mind that wasn't going to stop me. I'm going to be a musician in spite of it. I always was blessed with a talent, and I still am blessed with a talent. That never really factored into the equation. The hardest part of the recovery was not the deafness or the learning stuff that I had to go through, and thankfully kind of got over. I was level or even advanced placement in high school, in public high school, so thankful for that. But the hardest part was the memory loss. I just literally don't have any memories of Africa or my childhood. That's difficult, but other than that, I'm very blessed and very happy.
And you have a beautiful wife and 3 children and a powerful ministry. Like, I watched you this past few days. You led worship at a conference, and I watched you as you led worship, and the authority and the anointing on your life it's just off the chart. I mean, it is so real and so powerful. And I know nobody would choose to get meningitis in a faraway island mountain area where there's no running water. I mean, I don't know.
It was bad.
It was bad. Nobody would choose that kind of a story. But you know, Pastor, I feel like your story really proves the faithfulness of God, no matter where we're at or our circumstances, and the delivering power of God. It's so beautiful, and I just feel like if you have a circumstance in your life today you're dealing with, and it looks impossible. It looks like you can't even figure out how you got here. Just let me tell you, this family right here has lived through incredible, impossible circumstances, and God brought the miracle. And I want to encourage your faith today. Hang on, your miracle's coming.
Amen.